Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. I hope you've had a good week. If you've been doing Halloween things and firework things, I hope that's been going well. It's been busy. A couple of things to tell you about this week. I don't think it's going to be a super long one, so we'll try and keep it short. I think there's just 3 new things I want to tell you about, and then we can touch briefly on like what's coming up and stuff like that. But yeah, we're in that sort of kind of slowdown period, maybe. It's always hard to tell. Sometimes this is quite a busy period, but also there's quite a lot of conferences going on at the moment. There's quite a lot of activity. We see, quite a lot of the leadership team, a lot of CVPs out and about speaking at events at the moment. And then there's always as well, like, something towards Christmas. There's like a rush towards Christmas to meet deadlines before the year really wraps up as well. So we may be kind of in that interim, like mid-sprint kind of place as well. All right, so let's talk through some of the things that have been happening this week. And the first one is, let me share my screen so you can see what I'm seeing, a new API for Pages, which is quite interesting and exciting. There's a big update really to the Pages API. And this is currently coming out soon, and the plan is that it's going to be in public preview, so anybody can use it as like a beta, and the plan is to have that by the end of this month, so end of November. And they say they're committed to shipping it to GA by the end of April 23. And actually, that's a really interesting point that I would like to pick up on. I really like how they're calling out their roadmap plans to go from beta to GA, because it's good. It's important for developers to understand that if they go and start building software on these APIs that are in beta today, they need to know that there is a clear path to GA to allow them to kind of use that investment that they've made in those APIs to take them into product. So it's kind of good to see the team here really clearly calling out when they expect the API to go into GA. And that's not like a hard commitment, because obviously stuff might come up, stuff might happen that kind of means that doesn't quite track, but it's good to have that kind of commitment up front so developers are clear roughly about what they're thinking, and then they can kind of plan. And so this is like a big update, really. It's a new data model. I would encourage you to kind of go and read this blog post, understand it, and just be aware that it's coming. Obviously, Pages is kind of new as a concept. Although it's building on existing technology, so there's like the name change stuff as well. So this API kind of builds on all of that. And what's interesting is that they call out what the update is going to allow you to do. It's kind of that basic kind of CRUD around pages, around posts, and being able to put new posts into new items and publish new items and new pages. They do call out really clearly as well that this is going to be a breaking change to the one that's currently on the preview. So right now, this is where it gets a little bit confusing. So right now you can go and find on the beta endpoint an existing SharePoint Pages API. So just be aware that maybe don't use that just yet until this one has rolled out. You can know when it's rolled out because there's a roadmap item for it. That link to that is on this page as well, just right here. So you can go and kind of track it. So then understand all the big changes that have been made. I would say probably maybe don't build anything new on the existing one, on the existing API, because it is going to break, and it sounds like it is going to be a breaking change. So if all of that sounds interesting, then hopefully that's been useful. It'd be good for people building out, things that kind of automatically add things to SharePoint Pages, or build out a collection of pages and automatically add news posts and stuff like that. This will be a really good API for you to really understand. So just be aware that it's coming and it's changing. You've got those dates as well, and you've got those links so you can kind of track it. All right, talking about breaking changes, there's some more breaking changes coming, this time to the Insights API in Microsoft Graph. So let's have a look. So this is quite a small change, actually, and I almost wouldn't say this was a breaking change, but I kind of can see why they do it, because it's in V1, so it's not just beta. Like, this is a thing that they do have to kind of announce and give notice about. So The specific changes, when you read through it, you're like, oh, this feels like more like a bug fix than an actual breaking change. But let's go through it anyway. So when you are looking at some, there's a sort of specific endpoint, which I've linked here, in Graph in the Insights API for listing. Let's open it and we can go and have a look at it together. So let's just open it up here. So list used. So calculate and list the documents that a user has viewed or modified. So this is quite useful. It's come from the Insights API, gives you a lot of information into what the user is doing. And you can also, you can use application level permissions as well. So you can do it on behalf of different users and get that kind of information about documents that users have been viewing or have been modifying. So it's kind of potentially useful. I imagine it is well used. The interesting point about this is that in the information that comes back, there is a container type property. Now, according to the documentation, that can either be site or OneDrive business. So kind of defining where the document that the user has viewed, where it's hosted, where it's located. Is it in a SharePoint site? Is it in a OneDrive business location? Now, right now, that always returns site. So either you've ignored it and you're not using it, which is probably the best case, or you're interpreting it that everything is coming from SharePoint and nobody has noticed yet that that's not true. So the good news is that's going to be fixed. The breaking change is that it isn't always going to say site. So you can't always now rely on it saying site, because it will only now say site for when the file actually comes back from a SharePoint site. If it's coming back from OneDrive for Business, it will say OneDrive Business instead. So just be aware there is a new return type, if you like, a new possible return type for that property that probably should have always been there, but now is definitely going to be there. And that is coming at the end of November. So just be aware that it's coming. It might break your code. It probably shouldn't, if I'm honest, depending on how you've written your code. And you might just find that, especially if you're doing reporting on this information or just surfacing that information to the user, you're actually giving the user better and more information, more accurate information than previously. So that's all good. All right, and the last thing I want to tell you about is to do with sending messages in Bot Framework and proactively sending messages, creating conversations to send messages. These are all things we can do today. I've always had a little bit of a blind spot here around the service URL. I've never really fully understood it. It's always kind of confused me a little bit, and I've either just tried to kind of wing it and hope it works, or, kind of not really fully understood it. And so there's been some changes which have made it clearer for me. The thing that I normally do is tend to react to an existing conversation. And in that case, I always pick up the service URL as it comes in on the conversation. And it turns out that's the right thing to do, and that's fine, and you can keep doing that. If you're starting a conversation for the first time, what should the service URL be? I've never really known. I've always kind of guessed it. I've always looked at like a whole bunch of previous conversations and thought, well, they always have that service URL. Maybe I'll use that one. But then there've always been some variants around location. So there's like an EMEA one, an APAC one, an AMER one. And so it's always been I've been a bit unsure about what to put there. Now, turns out there's an updated documentation here around creating the conversation that goes into some good detail about what to do with the service URL. So it says if you have a service URL, if you know what the service URL is, you should use it. That's great. Or you can use one of the global service URLs if you don't. So if you're starting a new conversation and you don't know what the service URL should be, you can use one of the global endpoints. So this is the public global endpoint here of smba.trafficmanager.net/teams. There's also a GCC version and a GCC high version. So you do need to know whether or not your user that you're sending a message to, or the tenant that you're sending a message to, is on GCC or GCC high or not. But if they're not, then you can use this global service URL for all other messages, which is cool. It's good to have that fallback. I wasn't previously aware of that. So that is good information for me. I think previously I probably would have tried to guess it based on the location. So like an EMER one for like tenants I knew were hosted in Europe, and APAC probably for everywhere else, or AMER depending on where the tenant was located and stuff. So, but this is much better. This allows a good kind of catch-all service URL. Wasn't aware of it, so it's good information to have. So hopefully that makes your code better as well. If you had a similar kind of blind spot like I did around some of this stuff. Yeah, all good news. All right, I think that's everything from me. I'm going to try and keep it short. Oh, I haven't kept it short at all as we tick over 10 minutes. Never mind. But whatever it is you're doing this week, have a great week, and I hope it goes well. We've got a couple of things coming up towards the end of the month. I just want to bring your attention to the European SharePoint conference is coming up right at the end of the month in Copenhagen. I'm going to be there talking. That's going to be brilliant. And there's a couple of other conferences and stuff going on at the moment as well, so you kind of might see kind of notices and messages coming out from those. Every time I go to Twitter or LinkedIn, it seems there is like a new conference happening and a new keynote from a CVP or a Microsoft exec, so that's great to see. It's good to see them out and about in the community. Yeah, I think we've got a lot of time to make up for the past couple of years, so yeah, it's really good to see. Yeah, it's been 3 years since the last big 2019 Ignite. My phone reminded me the other day, kind of about this time 3 years ago was Microsoft Ignite. So, wow. All right, I'm going to stop talking now and let you get on with your day. Hope you have a great one, whatever it is you're doing, and I will speak to you again next time.